Embodied compassion versus identity-based compassion. So how to tell the difference? If we look out in the world and what we're seeing in the world and how it's confused, is that there's part of living in this world that's disagreeable. Some people call it suffering. And the difference is those with identity, compassion, are in the head and they're stuck in the head. So they look out, and I'm speaking from my own sense of knowing this because I can look back and see all the times that I thought I was being truly compassionate, but it wasn't. Until I embodied it, did I really understand it, and even to be able to understand what it is to have embodied compassion. So what are the signs of it? Well, we are trying to move from here to there. That's the idea. Get from here to there. We're in time. We're trying to move forward in time. Trying to go from here to there. And then we are like, what do we need to do in the world? What do we want to be? What do we want to bring to the world? And then we get ourselves riled up, and then we sit in our own discomfort, and then we see things outside of us, and we're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be this. And then we latch ourselves onto a badge. And so we will become a vegan, or we will go out to save all the dogs, or we will join the right political party. And this is how we will show our compassion to the world, and to show people that we are a compassionate being. And basically, it's just us dealing with the disagreements that we have within us, within our minds, and the discombobulation it is to be here in reality. So how do you tell if it's a embodied compassion or an identity compassion? There's always us versus them. So we take on a badge, and then we get right behind that badge, and we say that who isn't behind this badge is against us. And that's where we get the limited sense of the world, is that all of a sudden we think whatever we pick as the way to ease suffering in the world is the right one. And so you can see that in all those three that I named. You can see that there's this virulent, if you're not with me, you're against me. So what's embodied compassion? How do we do that? Well, embodied compassion is to go in and check out that disagreeableness within ourselves that we deal with internally. Some people call it healing. I see it as that we have this disagreeableness, whether it lives within our head and just daily life, or whether it's deep inside of us. And so, people call it trauma and all of these things, and I think that's just glamour that kind of slows down the process. Because then, here's a good one that just came up as I'm speaking, is an identity. As soon as somebody latches onto the idea of trauma, then they go out and they find people with trauma, and then they bubble wrap them and say, we have to protect this person because they've been traumatized, and then you're either for or against again. So embodied compassion is simply changing from the paradigm B, or the best lens that I have right now, is to look at it as that there's disagreeable stuff in this world, call it suffering, but we just take that and we embody it, and we start to look at our intention. And you can look for things, healing modalities and those kind of things. For me, it was alchemy, and finally, putting my attention. It was basically putting my attention on to this personal suffering that was happening within me, and then we embody compassion, And then compassion leaves the head and the mind of the identity, and we then come to a place where we understand, you truly understand what the suffering is, because you can't see it when you are going around. You're blinded by the identity of thinking you're doing everything right in the world, but you're actually creating more of a mess by making it's me against them. That's what creates the me against them. There's no better example of me against them than our politics in the United States. People are just like, how can you not be kind to each other? How can you not see what this person is doing? And it is a bunch of identity compassionated people. And there are people that have embodied compassion and still look at it. But once you recognize that the voices from the identity compassionate people are so loud that there is no voice to any embodied compassionate person, which is a relief, because what that tells you is I don't have to take part in these games, because they're just games and they're all mind games, and it's about embodying it. And that's the cool thing. And that's what Paradigm B is. Let's do this in the easiest way and the most efficient way to get her done and become compassionate beings. And the interesting thing about real embodied compassion is that the breaking down of the us versus them thing, and the world become more clear, and you start to see signs of elsewhere come up. Like there's other things, grander ideas that are elsewhere, that are outside of the story, the identity, compassion that plays out in Paradigm A. So I hope this was helpful.